Hello and welcome to episode 177 of Rivers Arcade Review. My name is Ed. This channel is dedicated to the coin-operated video games of yesteryear. Today I'm doing a viewer request. Today's game was requested by the viewer Atari Forever 2002, and the game they requested was Kid Niki Radical Ninja. Kid Niki Radical Ninja was released in 1986 by Irem and licensed to Data East. My first time playing this game was on MAME. Kid Niki Radical Ninja is an adventure-themed game in which you control a character named Kid Niki with an 8-way joystick and 2 buttons, one to jump and one to swing your sword. You need to fight your way through a series of enemies in order to save the princess. The game begins with Kid Niki inside of a ninja school. A bird gets shot down and Kid Niki decides to get even by fighting many enemy ninjas. Your character jumps through the window of the school with the message, "We'll help you." The game map will now be displayed, showing your path. After you are shown the map, you'll get a short cutscene describing the upcoming terrain, which is the Land of Trees. After defeating the enemies, you'll need to defeat the boss Death Breath. This game has a timer of what appears to be 9 minutes, although the timer clicks off 10 units every 3 seconds. You must complete each round before the timer expires or you will lose a life. If you lose all of your lives, you'll be able to continue for an added credit and you will retain your score. Once gameplay begins, you will face a series of enemies that you must either defeat or avoid, because if one contacts your character, you will lose a life. Losing life will reset the timer to 9 minutes. The first enemy you will face will be the Blue Ninja. These enemies will only use hand-to-hand combat and are the easiest to defeat and only need one hit with your sword to defeat them. The next enemy will be a White Bird. These birds will hover above the playfield and make jumping near them more difficult. You can defeat these birds, although you need to jump upward and attack with your sword to do so. The next enemy will be the Orange Ninjas. These enemies will be stationary, although they will jump upward, making it difficult to clear them. These enemies can also be destroyed with one hit of your sword. The next enemy you will face will be the Red Ninjas. These are the first enemies that will be armed. The first weapon they will brandish will be a spear on a coiled cable. The second weapon they will use will be a series of gold rings. You must avoid both of these weapons as well as the ninjas, because if you contact either, you will lose a life. In addition to the enemies, you will need to jump up and down steps. You need to jump to step upward, although you can just move down them safely. The blue ninjas are able to walk down the steps, although red ninjas are able to jump up the steps. Once you near the end, you will have several bodies of water that you will need to jump over. If you fail to jump the water, you will lose a life. After clearing the third body of water, you'll need to jump a series of steps, and after doing so, you'll face the Stage 1 boss. The Stage 1 boss, who is named Death Breath, is a ninja with a large head with inflated cheeks. This boss will lead most attacks with his head, which is invulnerable to your sword. Hitting his head with your sword will cause it to fly out of your hands and get stuck in either the ground or the sidewall. When this happens, you need to retrieve your sword so you can go back on the offensive. In addition, this boss will occasionally huff and puff and try to blow you backwards. When this happens, you will be sent back, although it will not harm you. You need to strike the boss in the body section to harm him. Each time you get a successful hit, he will shout ouch, although you will lose your sword similar to before. You'll need to strike the boss 3 times in the body area to defeat him. Once you defeat him, a scroll will appear from above, and once you grab it, the round will end and you'll get a congratulations message, and you will be brought back to the game map and you will advance to the next area. Round 2 is the Land of the Stone Buddhas, and you must defeat the end boss named Spike. This level has the same enemies as before, although there are a few new ones. The first new enemy is the yellow bird wearing a purple helmet. These enemies will attack in groups, although once they attack, their pattern is predictable. The next new enemy will be the green ninjas. These enemies will be in the trees and throw stones at you. It is possible for you to climb the trees and do battle with these ninjas. These ninjas will leap from the trees, and when they land, they will begin throwing stars at you. You must avoid both the ninjas as well as the thrown objects, because if any of these items contact you, you will lose a life. The next enemy will be the purple looping birds. These birds will fly to the left, although they will do loops every few seconds. Destroying these birds will cause them to drop gold coins. You can collect these coins for extra points, but you must do so in a timely fashion because they will disappear in about 2 seconds. The second boss you will face will be Spike. He will move from left to right and back again. He will continue to swing his chain mace up and down. You need to avoid both Spike and his mace, because contacting either will cost you a life. Anytime Spike reaches either side of the playfield, he will lay down his mace and change to a small spiked ball and toss it up once before throwing it toward your character. Once it makes it halfway, blades will protrude from it and continue to fly until it makes it 2/3 of the way across the playfield, and it will return back to Spike and he will return to using his mace. Just like the previous boss, you will lose control of your sword every time you contact Spike, and you will need to retrieve it before you can return on the offensive. It will take 7 hits to defeat Spike, and when you do, another scroll will appear from above, and collecting it will bring you back to the game map. Round 3 takes place in the Land of the Cliffs, and the boss is the Horned Witch. The first new enemy you'll face in this round will be the Vikings. These Vikings will begin below the path and roll up boulders with them. Once the Vikings reach the path, they will begin pushing the boulders towards your character. Hitting the boulder will only push it back a bit, although hitting the boulder 10 times will cause it to explode, and the Viking will run in the opposite direction, and you can defeat them for extra points. You can also hit the Viking from behind to defeat them. The next challenge will be for you to jump across gaps in the cliffs by leaping from cloud to cloud. These clouds will move up and down independently of one another. If you mistime a jump and miss a cloud, you will lose a life. While jumping from cloud to cloud, you will face several enemies from the past, although there will be one new enemy. This enemy is a yellow bird. This bird will carry a bomb and will throw it at your character. You must avoid both the bird and the bomb because contacting either will cost you a life. You can also defeat this bird for extra points. The next new enemy you'll face will be the flying kite. The kite will be a black and white rectangle with the pink ninja in the center of it. The kite will fly and loop around in the sky. Contacting this kite will cost you a life, so you need to either avoid or destroy it. Next you'll come to the broken suspension bridge. This bridge will have multiple broken sections that must be jumped across or you'll fall to your death. The entire time you are crossing, you'll be attacked by flying kites and red ninjas. After the bridge, you'll face the boss, which is the Horned Witch. The boss will continually jump around the playfield. Striking the witch will cause her to disappear, although she will immediately be replaced by 2 smaller versions of herself. The smaller witches will also jump around, although now they will fire arrows down at your character. You must strike each of these witches to defeat them, although doing so will cause them to change into 2 green birds. The green birds will not only jump around, but they will fly around in loops while in flight. They will also attack in pairs, making it hard to defeat them. Striking one of these birds will cause it to disappear, although striking the second one will cause it to split into 3 smaller green birds. These birds will also attack in a group of 3 as well as a looping pattern. Striking each of the small birds will cause them to disappear. Once you defeat the final small bird, it will briefly change back into the large horned witch, then she will explode and drop the scroll, allowing you to advance to the next round. Round 4 takes place in the cave of the green grub. During this round, the first new enemy you will face will be the flying bats. These bats will begin hanging down from the cave ceilings. They will then begin attacking in a looping fashion in an attempt to destroy your character. You must avoid or destroy these enemies with your sword. The next enemy you will face will be the fire-breathing frog. Just like the name suggests, these enemies will breathe fire toward your character. Some of these frogs will face away from your character, although it will bend backwards and breathe fire on you. You must avoid the frog and the fire, otherwise you will lose a life. After you exit the cave, you will come across a water section. You must jump over the water to waiting yellow platforms. Some of these platforms will raise and lower, and you must be careful that you are not standing on one while it lowers into the water, because if your head drops below water level, you will lose a life. You can jump just before these platforms sinks, and you will land safely because the platform will return just before you land. The entire time you are jumping across the platforms, large bubbles will appear from the water and float upwards. You need to avoid these bubbles because they are invulnerable to your sword, and if one contacts you, you will lose a life. In addition to the bubbles, there will be cocoons floating over some of the platforms. You need to avoid or destroy these cocoons because contacting one will cost you a life. Once you advance past the water section, you will face the stage boss. This boss is a large centipede that consists of a head and 6 body sections. This centipede will enter the playfield and loop around several times before exiting. There will be a flashing puff of smoke just before the centipede enters the playfield, giving you a warning of where it will appear. The same puff of smoke will appear just before exiting the playfield. The centipede will also release bubbles like those you faced earlier that must be avoided. You must destroy all 6 sections of the body before defeating the head section because the head is invulnerable as long as there are any body sections remaining. Hitting a body section will cause the skin portion to disappear and the skeleton will remain. Once you defeat the body sections, you must now hit the head 3 times to defeat it. Once you defeat the head, the entire skeleton will fall apart and fall down around you, and you will receive another scroll. Round 5 takes place in the forest of mad monks. The first new enemy you will face will be the spinning green birds. These birds will attack downward as they spin, and they will land on the ground and continue to spin while they attack you. You need to defeat or avoid these enemies because contacting one will cost you a life. The next enemy will be the mini monks called chubbies. These enemies will attack you either hand to hand or throw a ring of beads toward you. After the chubbies, you will face more mini monks that have the ability to fly and will attack in a looping formation. After the flying monks, you will face the boss, who is Big Baldy. As the battle goes on, he will shout obscenities at you in word bubbles that will bounce and fly toward you. These word bubbles must be avoided because contacting one will cost you a life. In addition, mini monks will also attack during the boss battle. You must strike Big Baldy 5 times to turn him into stone and defeat him. Round 6 takes place at the castle gate. The first enemy will be the orange ninjas, although now these enemies will enter singularly, although now they will jump on top of another and attack in a group formation. Striking the lower ninjas will cause the upper ones to come down and attack you, so you must be cautious. The next new enemy will be the white masked ninjas. These enemies will be able to climb on the walls, and they will blow poison bubbles that will rise up. You need to avoid both the ninjas and the bubbles because contacting either will cost you a life. Once you pass all the enemies, you must climb the ladder to reach the boss battle. This boss is a samurai guard and is very difficult to destroy. This boss moves very slowly from left to right and back again, all while carrying a long staff with a crescent moon on the end. To defeat this boss, you will need to do a twofold attack. First, you need to strike him to cause him to drop his staff. Once he loses his staff, he is vulnerable to attack. Just like all the other bosses, striking the boss will cause you to lose your sword. You need to retrieve your sword and strike the boss before he retrieves his staff to score us a hit. You need to use caution because if your sword lands too high for you to retrieve it, you'll be unarmed and vulnerable until you lose a life. You need to hit this boss 3 times to defeat him and obtain the scroll. After defeating the samurai guard, you will advance to the 7th round. This round will consist of all the enemies you faced earlier in the game, although in greater numbers, as well as attacking at a faster speed. Once you reach the end of the level, you must once again climb the ladder in order to face the final boss, who is the Stone Wizard. This battle takes place in the temple. The princess is tied up and hanging from the ceiling. The boss will be to the right of the princess. You need to use caution to avoid hitting the princess with your sword. This boss will spit fireballs at your character, which must be avoided. Striking the boss 3 times will cause him to escape and you will advance to the next round. Round 8 is the final round. You have trapped the wizard and must now finish him off. This round you will face the wizard immediately. Striking him twice will cause him to shrink into a smaller version of himself and he will fly away. After he flies away, you will face the sky section where you must jump from cloud to cloud similarly to the water crossing earlier in the game. You will also face enemies from earlier in the game during this round. Reaching the end of the sky section, the boss will return. The poison bubbles have returned and must be avoided during the boss battle. You need to strike him twice and he will once again shrink and retreat. After the boss retreats, you must jump from rooftop to rooftop. You need to avoid falling between these roofs because if you miss, you will lose a life. You are able to safely walk on the slow portions of the roof to make the gap easier to clear. The final battle takes place on the top of the palace. There are 4 yellow demon heads in the sky, although they do not affect gameplay. The boss will switch between the smaller and larger versions of himself, all while moving around the playfield. While the boss is small, he is invulnerable, and when he is large, he will once again spit fireballs at you, although now when they land, they will ignite and the fire will be 4 times higher than the fireball. You'll need to strike the boss twice while he is large to defeat him, then he will fall off the roof to his death. Once the boss lands, you will jump down on top of him and you will receive a congratulations message, then the screen will display the end. Scoring for the game is as follows. You earn 100 points for the yellow birds, 200 points for the blue and orange ninjas as well as the flying monks, 300 points for the green ninjas, bats, and chubbies. You'll also earn 300 points for breaking a boulder and 500 points for defeating the Viking after breaking the boulder. You earn 400 points for the green spinning birds, 500 points for the white birds, red ninjas, cocoons, coins, kites, frogs, and masked ninjas. For defeating the bosses, you'll earn 5,000 points for Death Breath, Spike, the Horned Witch, the Centipede, and the Samurai Guard, although you'll earn no points for defeating Big Baldy. You'll earn 10,000 points for beating the Stone Wizard and causing him to escape, and 20,000 points for defeating him at the end of the game. You'll also earn a bonus based on the time remaining on the clock. You'll earn 20,000 points for having more than 5 minutes left on the clock, 10,000 points for greater than 4 minutes but less than 5, 5,000 points for greater than 3 minutes but less than 4, 3,000 points for greater than 2 minutes but less than 3, 1,000 points for greater than 1 minute but less than 2, and no bonus for less than 1 minute remaining. This was my first time playing this game, although I found it easy to catch on. I wasn't a fan, although I can't condemn a game due to my lack of ability to play it, so I recommend playing it whether in an arcade setting or on an emulator. I like this game more than Mad Alien, but not as much as Jump Coaster, so Kid Niki Radical Ninja fights its way into the 148th position overall. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any games you'd like me to review, please leave a message below or on my homepage. Please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned to new videos every Sunday.